The last human colony burns. The sky was burning. Flames reached high into the dark void of space as explosions tore through the last human colony. The planet, once a thriving home for survivors, was now nothing more than a battlefield. Smoke covered the ground, turning the air thick and unbreathable. The people had nowhere to run. Commander Darius Kane stood on the command deck of the Iron Will, the last surviving human warship. His fists clenched as he watched the massacre below. The enemy ships hovered in the sky, raining fire upon the city. Alien soldiers, tall, armored beasts with glowing red eyes, marched through the streets, killing without mercy. "This is it," one of his officers whispered. "They've finally come to finish us." Darius did not look away. He had always known this day would come. Humanity had been losing the war for years. Every colony had fallen. Every fleet had been destroyed. Earth itself was nothing but a burned ruin floating in space. This colony, Athens 7, was the last refuge. And now, it was dying. A desperate voice crackled through the ship's speakers. "To any human forces, this is Governor Lijavale. We are under attack, requesting immediate evac." The transmission ended in static. Darius closed his eyes. He knew what that meant. The governor was dead. The city was lost. Commander, his second in command, Lieutenant Graves, spoke. "We have to leave. We can't fight them all." Darius turned to face his crew. His officers were strong, loyal, but their eyes were filled with fear. They had fought so many battles. They had lost so much. And now, they were watching their last home burn. He took a deep breath. "Prepare the ship for combat," he ordered. Graves hesitated. "Sir, we're outnumbered 20-1. If we fight, we die." Darius met his gaze. His voice was cold, steady. "Then we die fighting." The crew did not argue. They had followed Darius through every battle, through every retreat. If this was their end, they would make it count. The Iron Will roared to life, engines burning bright as it turned toward the enemy fleet. Alien warships locked onto them, charging their weapons. The ship's eye, a cold mechanical voice, spoke. "Warning. Enemy fleet is preparing to fire. Survival probability, less than 1%. Darius smiled grimly. "Then let's make that 1% count." The first enemy shots came like meteors, streaking through space. The Iron Will dodged, its shields flickering under the impact. Darius gripped the command chair. "Fire all weapons." Missiles launched. Lasers cut through the void. And for a moment, the Iron Will fought like a beast refusing to die. Enemy ships exploded in fiery bursts, their wreckage drifting into the endless dark. But it was not enough. More alien warships surrounded them, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Darius knew the next attack would be the last. His crew braced for impact. Then, the impossible happened. A signal, faint, ancient, echoed through the ship's systems. It was not human. It was not alien. It was something else. A cold, mechanical voice spoke through the ship's speakers. "Deathworlders, awaken." Darius' eyes widened. The word sent chills down his spine. He looked at Graves, who was just as stunned. "What was that?" Graves whispered. The signal repeated. "Deathworlders, awaken." Then something strange happened. The enemy fleet hesitated. Their ships stopped firing. It was as if they had heard the signal too, and they were afraid. Darius didn't know what this meant. He didn't know who had sent the signal or why the aliens were reacting this way. But he knew one thing. It was not over. Not yet. A lost weapon, a forgotten war. The stars stretched into long streaks of light as the Revenant hurtled through hyperspace. The ship was running on emergency power, its hull scared and battered from the battle over Omega-7. The last human colony was gone, wiped out in fire and blood. And yet a signal had called them, a whisper from deep space, carrying a name that sent chills down Darius Kane's spine. Deathworlders. Unleashed. The words echoed in his mind as he stood on the bridge, staring at the unreadable coordinates on the screen. Lieutenant Hale shifted nervously at his station. "Sir, we've never seen anything like this before. The signal isn't bouncing off anything. It's coming from a fixed point, but—" He hesitated. "It shouldn't exist. There's no star system there." Darius folded his arms. "Then what the hell is out there?" No one answered. They were heading toward a ghost in the void. The arrival. A dead world that breathes. The Revenant dropped out of hyperspace, its engines humming as it approached the coordinates. The crew gasped. In front of them hung a massive dark planet. No sunlight, no heat, no signs of life. It was completely shrouded in thick, swirling black clouds. A dead world. And yet, the signal was coming from inside it. "This is insane," Hale muttered. "That thing shouldn't be here." The planet wasn't on any chart, no records, no name. Darius stared at it, his instincts screaming danger, but something deeper, something ancient pulled at him. He turned to his crew. "Prepare for descent." The descent. Into the abyss. The ship's hull groaned as it pushed through the heavy atmosphere. Lightning crackled across the sky, illuminating glimpses of the world below. Through the darkness, they saw structures, towering spires of black metal, covered in dust and ice, forgotten by time. Then the scanners picked up something shocking. "Sir, there's oxygen down there," Graves reported. "And gravity. This place is stable." Darius' fingers tapped against his armrest. Stable, but abandoned. What the hell was this place? The Revenant landed on a massive platform, clearly artificial. Someone had built this. But who? And why? The crew geared up, weapons ready. The airlock hissed open, and the lost world swallowed them whole. The city of ghosts. As they stepped out, their boots echoed against metal streets covered in dust and ice. Buildings rose around them like tombstones. Towering walls stretched into the darkness. A dead city. Hale knelt down, brushing the dirt from the metal floor. He squinted. "Sir, this writing. It's not alien." Darius stepped closer. His stomach twisted as he saw the faded markings on the walls. It was human. "This is impossible," Graves whispered. "Humans were never here." But they had been. Darius' heartbeat thundered in his chest. The structures, the massive machines buried beneath the ice, the abandoned battle stations. This wasn't just a city, it was a fortress. And then they found the bodies. Frozen corpses, armored in battle suits unlike anything Darius had ever seen. Their helmets were shattered, their weapons rusted. They had died fighting. But fighting what? A metallic voice crackled to life from the darkness. Human presence detected. The crew spun, weapons raised. A towering AI construct, its metal frame fused into the wall, its red eyes flickering with dying energy, stared at them. It spoke again. "Identify." Darius stepped forward. His voice was firm. "Commander Darius Kane, human. We received your signal." The AI's eyes flickered brighter. "Commander Kane, you are late." The truth. A war erased from history. The AI's processors whirred. Data flashed across its ancient circuits. Then, it spoke words that changed everything. This world was humanity's last weapon. Darius felt his blood run cold. "Explain." The AI hesitated, as if it struggled to remember. "The war. Humanity did not lose. We were erased." Hale's mouth went dry. "Erased? By who?" The AI's voice turned into a low hum. "The architects. The ones who feared you." Darius frowned. "Who the hell are the architects?" The AI paused. Then, a holographic screen flickered to life, showing ancient battlefields. Human warships unlike anything in modern history. Soldiers fighting against monstrous beings made of metal and light. And then, the betrayal. The architects controlled the galaxy, the AI explained. When humanity grew too strong, they united the alien races against you, a war unlike any before. You were winning. The hologram change, showing human forces destroying enemy fleets, claiming entire systems. But they did not fight you. They erased you. Another image. Entire planets, vanishing. Not destroyed, not invaded, deleted. Every record of your existence was wiped. Every battle, erased. Every survivor, hunted. This fortress was the last attempt to fight back. Darius stared in disbelief. His entire life, he had believed humanity lost. Beaten. Weak. But that was a lie. Humanity hadn't lost. They had been erased. And now, after all these years, the enemy had finally made a mistake. They had missed a few survivors. And one of them was standing right here. The war begins again. Darius turned to his crew. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. They had spent their lives running. Now, they had a reason to fight. He looked at the AI. You sent the signal. Why? The AI's eyes gleamed. Because the war never ended. You are the last of the Deathworlders. And it is time to finish what was started. Darius smiled. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid. The Deathworlders rise again. The past was a lie. Darius Kane stood in the heart of a long-forgotten fortress, deep beneath the dead world's surface. The air was thick with dust, the walls scared by ancient battles. His pulse pounded in his ears as he replayed the AI's words over and over. Humanity was not defeated. It was erased. The galaxy had been tricked. The history of his people had been rewritten. The war against humanity had never been won. It had been silenced. But now, the silence was broken, and Darius would make sure the galaxy heard the truth. The awakening. The AI's red eyes pulsed in the dim chamber, scanning Darius and his crew. Its ancient voice hummed with mechanical certainty. The Deathworlder War Vault is operational. Weapons awaiting activation. Orders. Darius turned to his team. Lieutenant Hale, the young but sharp-eyed weapons officer, still looked shaken. Graves, his most trusted second-in-command, had his arms crossed, processing everything. The rest of the crew exchanged glances, waiting for orders. Darius exhaled. This was the moment. We need to see what's left, he said. If we're going to fight back, we need weapons, ships, anything that can give us an edge. The AI acknowledged with a low beep. Follow. A hidden door slid open, revealing an elevator shaft descending into darkness. Darius stepped forward, heart hammering in his chest. He didn't know what he would find below. But if the legends were true, if the Deathworlders were more than just myth, then this was where humanity's last warriors had made their stand, and where they would rise again. The Vault of the Forgotten. The elevator groaned as it descended, ancient mechanisms grinding back to life after centuries of silence. The chamber they entered was massive, stretching further than the eye could see. Rows upon rows of battle suits, tanks, and war machines lay in stasis, covered in frost. The walls were lined with weapon lockers, each containing technology far beyond anything modern humans had ever seen. Hale let out a low whistle. This is impossible. Darius ran a hand over the nearest battle suit. It was human-made, but unlike any armor he had ever seen. Dark metal, reinforced plating, a built-in exoskeleton. These were not ordinary soldiers. The AI's voice echoed through the chamber. Project Revenant. Final generation of Deathworlders. Bio-enhanced soldiers, built for war. Program terminated upon humanity's erasure. Darius turned sharply. Bio-enhanced. A new screen flickered to life, showing grainy recordings. Soldiers taller, faster, stronger than any normal human, moving like shadows through battlefields, tearing through enemy forces like gods of war. They had been the last hope, but they had never been deployed. Something had stopped them. The betrayal. Graves frowned. If this place was our last stand, why didn't we use these? The AI hesitated. Unauthorized data access. Memory corrupted. Darius narrowed his eyes. Something was missing. The war had been erased from history, but had humanity's own leaders played a role in their downfall? Had someone on their side helped erase them? The thought made his stomach turn. Hale interrupted. Sir, these suits, they're still powered. Darius turned. The final generation of Deathworlders, a forgotten army, still waiting for their war. Then let's wake them up. Revival of the Deathworlders. Darius activated the vault's main control panel. Deep inside the complex, something roared to life. Machines hummed. The sleeping warriors began to stir. The first stasis pod hissed open. Inside, a human soldier, pale skin, closed eyes, built like a war machine, lay motionless. The pod's readings blinked green. Then, the soldier's eyes snapped open. Gasps filled the chamber. The Deathworlders were alive. More pods opened. One by one, the soldiers of humanity's forgotten past took their first breaths in centuries. And they looked ready to fight. The first mission: strike the enemy. Darius turned back to the AI. How long before they're battle-ready? Physical recovery. Immediate. Combat readiness. Full access to past training. Darius smirked. Perfect. He turned to his crew. They weren't alone anymore. They weren't just a small, struggling resistance. They had an army. It was time for their first mission. Darius tapped his communicator. Revenant, prepare for launch. We're heading to the nearest enemy outpost. Hale's eyes widened. Sir, are you serious? We're attacking already. Darius nodded. If we sit here, they'll find us. We have the weapons, we have the soldiers, and we have the element of surprise. Graves cracked his knuckles. Then let's make it count. Darius turned back to the newly awakened Deathworlders. Are you ready? The soldiers did not hesitate. They spoke as one. No surrender, no survivors, only vengeance. Darius grinned. The Deathworlders had returned. The galactic powers take notice. The war that was supposed to be over had just begun again. For centuries, the enemy believed humanity was gone, erased from history, buried beneath the weight of time. No one had dared to whisper their name. No one had questioned their absence. The architects, the self-proclaimed rulers of the galaxy, had ensured that humanity's story ended in silence. But silence never lasts forever. And now, the impossible had happened. Somewhere in the vast reaches of space, a human fleet had returned. A fleet armed with weapons from a forgotten age, commanded by a man who refused to die, and led by warriors who should not exist. The galaxy had ignored the warnings. Now it would feel the consequences. The enemy feels fear. On the bridge of the Imperial warship Servax, a high-ranking officer of the Drachna Empire, Admiral Vexus, stared at the incoming transmission. It was a message unlike any other. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the ruins of Outpost Theta, one of their most well-guarded supply stations in the Outer Rim. Bodies of alien soldiers lay scattered across the battlefield. Some burned, others ripped apart with inhuman precision. The station's entire garrison, over 10,000 troops, was gone. Not a single survivor. And then, the screen cut to static before revealing a message, burned into the walls of the ruined command center. A message written in human blood. No surrender. No survivors. Only vengeance. The bridge fell silent. One of the communication officers, a reptilian being with sharp mandibles, turned to Vexus. His voice was shaky. Sir, this is the third attack in 2 weeks. Vex's claws curled into a fist. His voice, normally smooth and commanding, was low with a rare emotion among his kind. Fear. Who is doing this? He demanded. The officer swallowed. Unknown, sir. But... He hesitated. Vexus turned sharply. But what? The officer took a deep breath. They call themselves Deathworlders. The bridge went deathly still. Someone gasped. Others whispered. Vex's skin grew cold. His mind reeled back to ancient war records, to stories he had once dismissed as myths. He had heard the name before. A name that was not supposed to exist anymore. The Deathworlders. Impossible. Yet, here they were. And they had declared war. The human counterattack. Meanwhile, aboard the Revenant, Darius Kane stood on the command deck, his expression unreadable as he reviewed the results of their first 3 strikes. 3 enemy outposts. 3 complete annihilations. The enemy had underestimated them. They thought humanity was weak. They thought they had erased them. Now, they were learning the truth the hard way. The war was not over. It had never been over. The Deathworlders were back. And this time, they were not here to survive. They were here to win. "Sir," Graves spoke from his station, interrupting Darius' thoughts. "We've intercepted enemy transmissions. The Drachna Empire is officially mobilizing. They've put the entire sector on high alert." Darius smirked. "Good. They're scared," Hale added. "They don't know who we are or how many of us there are." Darius turned to the massive holographic star map in front of him. "Let's keep it that way. We're not fighting a conventional war." He pointed at several enemy stations across the map. "We hit them where they don't expect. We strike fast. No warnings. No survivors." The soldiers of the Deathworlder battalion stood behind him, silent and watching. These men and women were not ordinary humans. They were the last remnants of an elite army built for extinction-level warfare. For the first time, they were doing what they were meant to do. They were hunting. The galaxy reacts. Word of the Deathworlder attacks spread across the galactic network like wildfire. Every major empire, from the insectoid Sol to the cold-blooded Vormeri, received the reports. Some dismissed them as rumors. Some laughed, believing them to be rogue rebels using human symbols as a scare tactic. But others knew better. In the heart of the Architect Council, a meeting was called. The architects were the true rulers of the galactic order, the unseen hand that controlled empires, erased civilizations, and ensured that no species ever rose above their place. And they knew what this meant. A cold, emotionless voice filled the dark chamber. "We have a problem." A holographic image of the Deathworlder attacks appeared. Footage from the ruined outposts, the horrific precision of the strikes, the eerie silence left behind. One of the council members, a shadowed figure with glowing white eyes, leaned forward. "It can't be them. They were destroyed. We made sure of it." The central figure, known only as the Prime, spoke. "And yet, they have returned." Another member's voice, filled with unease, whispered, "What if we did not erase them completely?" The chamber fell silent. The architects were afraid. Darius' next move. Back aboard the Revenant, Darius prepared for their next assault. The enemy was scrambling. They were afraid. But fear was not enough. He needed to send a message they would never forget. Graves stepped forward. "We've identified an opportunity, sir." One of their military commanders, Admiral Vexus, is traveling to a secure station in the Outer Rim. Darius narrowed his eyes. "Security. Minimal. They don't expect an attack this deep into their territory." Darius smiled darkly. "Then we show them what a Deathworlder strike really looks like." His soldiers stood at attention, waiting. The Deathworlders did not ask questions. They did not doubt. They simply acted. Darius turned to the command console and gave the order. "Prepare for war." The ship's engines roared to life. The hunt was on, the battle that shakes the galaxy. The stars trembled with the echoes of war. Across the Outer Rim, rumors spread like wildfire. A forgotten army had returned. Entire outposts were vanishing. High-ranking officials were disappearing. Weapons depots were left in flames. The Drachna Empire had ruled the stars for centuries, but now something was hunting them. Something they did not understand. Something they could not stop. And tonight, that something was coming for Admiral Vexus, the target. Admiral Vexus' stronghold. Darius Kane stood aboard the Revenant, arms crossed, eyes locked on the holographic display. A massive fortified station hovered in the middle of deep space, Fortress Prime, one of the Empire's most secure military outposts. And at its heart, Admiral Vexus. Security, Darius asked. Lieutenant Hale scanned the readings. Tighter than usual. They know we're coming. Graves smirked. Doesn't matter. Darius nodded. No, it doesn't. They had already destroyed 3 enemy outposts in the past few weeks. The enemy was panicking, shifting resources, reinforcing borders. But Fortress Prime was different. This was not a supply depot. This was a statement. Vexus was one of the Architect's chosen generals. If they took him out, it wouldn't just be an attack. It would be a declaration of war. And Darius wanted the entire galaxy to hear it. The Deathworlders' strategy. Hale tapped the console, and a plan unfolded. The station has triple-layered defenses, he said. 2 orbital fleets guarding it, plus automated turrets. Graves chuckled. So, what's the good news? Hale smirked. They think we'll hit them head-on. They have no idea we have stealth drop pods. Darius turned to his elite strike force, the newly awakened Deathworlders. Each of them was clad in advanced war armor, stronger, faster, deadlier than any normal human. They were the perfect soldiers, built for one thing: total destruction. Darius gave a sharp nod. We land inside the station, disable their command systems, and take Vexus. Fast and brutal. The Deathworlders pounded their fists against their chests. No questions, no hesitation. They lived for battle. And tonight, they would remind the galaxy why humanity was once feared. The infiltration. Silent death. Fortress Prime was a floating metal giant, bristling with defenses, its shields strong enough to withstand a fleet. But shields meant nothing if the enemy was already inside. A fleet battle would be suicide. A direct assault would be madness. But Darius didn't need a direct assault. He needed surgical precision. The stealth drop pods detached from the Revenant, small and undetectable. They drifted like debris, silent as the void, approaching the station unnoticed. Then the pods lashed onto the hull, and the Deathworlders descended like shadows. They cut through the bulkheads with plasma torches. No alarms, no sensors triggered. They were inside before anyone knew. The assault. The nightmare begins. The first kill was fast. A Drachna soldier patrolling the corridors didn't even have time to scream before a Deathworlder's blade sliced through his throat. One by one, the guards fell. Silently, efficiently. Darius moved like a ghost through the halls, his rifle aimed steady, his heartbeat calm. The Deathworlders spread through the station like a virus, disabling turrets, cutting power, hacking into security feeds. Then the alarm blared. They had been seen, but it was already too late. Darius smirked as chaos erupted. Now came the real fun. The war room, confronting Vexus. Deep inside the station, Admiral Vexus watched in horror. The battle was playing out on his screens. His elite troops slaughtered. His defenses breached. This was not possible. He turned to his officers. Who are they? A terrified commander stammered. Sir, they're human. Vexus froze. A thunderous explosion rocked the station. The doors to the war room burst open, and Darius Kane stepped inside. His battle armor dripped with blood, his rifle still smoking. Behind him, his Deathworlders fanned out, their weapons raised. Vexus reached for his gun, but Darius was faster. A single shot. The Admiral's hand exploded into a mess of bone and black blood. Vexus fell to his knees, clutching his ruined arm. His eyes, filled with terror. Darius strode toward him, slow and deliberate. He knelt, bringing his face inches from the admiral's. "You thought we were gone," Darius whispered. "You thought you erased us." Vex's breathing was ragged. You can't win. The architects. They'll." Darius cut him off. "We are Deathworlders." His voice was ice. "And we do not lose." Then he pulled the trigger. Vex's body hit the floor, lifeless. The galaxy's first real warning had just been sent. The aftermath. A name the galaxy will fear again. As the Deathworlders extracted from the station, they left only destruction in their wake. The remaining enemy troops, eliminated. The security systems, corrupted beyond repair. The weapons stockpiles, turned against their own fleet. And before they left, Darius made sure of one last thing. The last thing the station's black box recorded was a single message. "We are Deathworlders. We are back." No surrender, no survivors, only vengeance. The galaxy shakes. The architects received the news within hours. A human force had struck one of their most secure locations and wiped out one of their top generals. And it was not an isolated attack. It was a warning. The war they had buried was rising from the grave, and for the first time in centuries. The architects felt fear. The final stand. No surrender. The galaxy was on fire. Across the known universe, the impossible had happened. Humanity had returned. Their name had been erased from history, their warriors buried in time, their planets wiped from the stars. Yet now, their flag was painted in blood across battlefields once thought secure. No one knew where they came from. No one understood how they had survived. But everyone knew one thing. The Deathworlders were back, and they had only just begun. The architects respond. The Death Fleet mobilizes. Deep within the core of the Architect Council, panic rippled through the shadowy rulers of the galaxy. They had spent centuries shaping the universe, controlling its history, crushing threats before they could rise. But somehow, humanity had slipped through their fingers. They had assumed the last remnants of the human race had died on lost, burning worlds. Now, entire fleets were vanishing. Elite commanders were being executed. The architects could no longer ignore it. The Prime Architect, a being of formless energy wrapped in a dark metallic exosuit, addressed the council. Its voice was neither male nor female, but something deeper, something ancient. They have awakened. A nervous insectoid warlord, his mandibles clicking, asked, "Are they many?" The Prime Architect studied the battle reports. The numbers did not make sense. These attacks, they were precise, efficient, brutal. They spoke of a large, well-coordinated military force. But that was impossible. The architects had wiped out every trace of their fleets. Then the realization struck. It was not an army. It was a legend come to life. It was a nightmare that should have never returned. Numbers do not matter, the Prime Architect said coldly. It is who they are. A murmur of dread filled the chamber. The name alone was enough to send fear crawling down the spines of the most powerful beings in the universe. Deathworlders. The Prime Architect turned toward a towering screen, showing tactical displays of human attacks. It raised a hand. Deploy the Death Fleet. Burn them from existence. The last stronghold of humanity. Darius Kane stood on the edge of a massive war table, his fingers tapping against the steel surface. The holographic map before him flickered, showing incoming enemy movements. They were mobilizing everything. The Drachna Empire, the Tull Dominion, the Vormeri Swarm. All architect-controlled species were now converging on a single location, the last hidden stronghold of humanity. A dying planet known as Black Sky. It had been an abandoned fortress world, lost in the shadows of the galactic frontier. Now, it was humanity's last battlefield. Graves crossed his arms. They know where we are. Hale looked at the fleet projections. And they're sending everything. Darius exhaled. This was always going to happen. The architects had spent centuries trying to erase them. Now they were coming to finish the job. He turned to the gathered Deathworlders, their battle armor gleaming under the war room's lights. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the best of humanity, the last warriors of a race that refused to die. Darius' voice was steady. They think they've won. They think we're just remnants of a dead species. He looked around the room, meeting every gaze. They're wrong. Silence. Then he stepped forward and spoke the words that had become a war cry. No surrender, no survivors, only vengeance. And the Deathworlders roared. The battle begins. The enemy descends. The enemy fleet arrived in numbers that blotted out the sky. Thousands of warships, countless legions of alien soldiers, an unstoppable force designed to crush civilizations. The architects believed in overwhelming power. If a species resisted, they drowned them in endless fire. This was their final strike. A transmission from the lead architect commander crackled through the Revenant speakers. A cold, synthetic voice filled the ship. Human anomaly, you are outnumbered, outgunned. Your species ends today. Darius smirked. Come and try. The first wave. The Deathworlders strike. The architect fleet rained fire from the sky. Plasma beams, energy bombardments, nuclear warheads descended upon black sky like the wrath of the gods. But the planet had been prepared. Massive energy shields crackled to life, absorbing the first wave of destruction. Anti-air railguns fired back, tearing enemy bombers from the sky. The surface defenses held firm. Then, the Deathworlders launched their counterattack. From hidden bunkers and underground tunnels, human strike teams emerged. They moved like phantoms, cutting down entire battalions before disappearing into the ruins. Darius led the first assault team, carving a path through enemy lines. His soldiers fought like demons, their advanced battle armor allowing them to tear through enemy forces with terrifying efficiency. The architects had sent an army, but what they had encountered was something else entirely. Something that fought like monsters. Something that fought like Deathworlders. The architects' last move. The doomsday weapon. The battle raged for hours. Black sky became a graveyard of fallen warships and burning cities. The architects' forces were powerful, but they had never fought humans like this before. Then, the architects made their final play. A massive ship, larger than a city, loomed over the battlefield. Its weapons were not meant for war. They were meant for extinction. Graves' voice was sharp. They're bringing out a planet killer. Darius looked up at the monstrous ship. It was a relic from the old wars, one of the weapons used to erase entire human colonies in the past. The architects were done playing games. They were going to burn black sky to the ground. Darius' grip tightened around his rifle. No, he growled. Not again. The last charge. Humanity's reckoning. Darius turned to his crew. There was no hesitation. They knew what had to be done. Take out that ship, or die trying. The Revenant roared to life, pushing through the battlefield toward the colossal warship. Other Deathworlder ships followed. Fighters swarmed around them, dodging incoming fire, weaving through the chaos. Then they breached the ship. Darius led the charge. No fear, no hesitation. The architects had spent centuries erasing humanity. Now, humanity would erase them. The ending. The final stand. The battle inside the ship was a storm of blood and metal. Darius' team tore through architect forces, fighting like the monsters they had once feared. They reached the ship's core, and with one final detonator charge, they sent it into oblivion. The explosion lit up the battlefield. The architect's last weapon was gone. And at that moment, something changed. The enemy broke. Their forces began to retreat. For the first time in centuries, humanity had won. No survivors, only vengeance. The galaxy held its breath. For centuries, the architects had ruled with absolute power. They had erased civilizations, rewritten history, and silenced all who defied them. They had been untouchable. Until now. Until the Deathworlders returned. Until the final battle began. This was no longer a war. This was humanity's vengeance. The Architects' last stand. The end of an empire. The explosion of the planet killer ship had shattered the enemy's will. Their forces were in disarray. The mighty fleets of the Architects, once symbols of terror, were retreating. But Darius Kane was not done. Standing aboard the Revenant, he watched as the enemy ran. His blood burned with fury. The Architects had tried to erase them. They had wiped out entire human colonies, enslaved survivors, and rewritten the past. And now, they were afraid. His voice cut through the bridge. Chase them down. No survivors. Hale hesitated. Sir, they're broken. We've won. Darius' eyes were cold. Not yet. The pursuit, hunting the gods of the galaxy. The Deathworlder fleet launched in full force. The retreating Architect warships tried to regroup, to flee into deep space, but the Deathworlders were relentless. The hunters had become the hunted. From the wreckage of Black Sky, Deathworlder strike teams boarded fleeing ships, tearing apart enemy crews with brutal efficiency. They moved with ghost-like precision, clearing halls in minutes, leaving nothing but silence behind. Ship by ship, fleet by fleet, the Architect's power crumbled. But Darius' real target was still ahead. The Prime Architect. The being who had orchestrated humanity's erasure. The true ruler of the galaxy. And Darius was coming for it. The final battle. The Prime Architect's last hope. At the heart of the Architect homeworld, the Prime Architect sat in the darkness of its control chamber. The towering being, encased in a suit of living metal, had spent centuries ruling from the shadows. Now, the shadows betrayed it. The control screens flickered. Reports flooded in. The fleet was gone. The defenses were failing. The Deathworlders were coming. A deep mechanical voice filled the chamber. The Prime's own AI, warning of the inevitable. Warning. The human anomaly has breached the planetary shield. Total defeat imminent. The Prime Architect clenched its elongated fingers. It had underestimated them. It had believed humanity was weak. It had believed their destruction had been complete. And it had been wrong. The Deathworlders enter the Architect throne world. From orbit, the Revenant led the final charge. The Deathworlders descended like fire from the sky. Darius Kane, clad in his battle-worn armor, stood at the front. His rifle was heavy. His purpose was heavier. The enemy had ruled for too long. Now, it was time for their rule to end. The city was already burning as Deathworlders stormed the capital. Enemy soldiers fell before them, their weapons useless against the unstoppable force. Through the ruined corridors of the Architect Palace, Darius carved a path. At the end of that path, the Prime Architect waited. The final confrontation. A god faces a Deathworlder. The Prime Architect stood tall, its metallic body shifting in eerie waves of light. It did not beg. It did not run. It only stared at Darius, studying him as if trying to understand. "You should not exist," it said. Darius raised his rifle. "Neither should you." The Prime's voice was smooth, almost calm. "You cannot kill me. I am eternal. I am the Architect of this galaxy." Darius took a slow step forward. "And I am its reckoning." The Prime lashed out, faster than any being should be. Its metal body morphed into razor-sharp tendrils, striking at Darius like a storm. But Darius was faster. He ducked, rolled, and fired. 3 shots, straight into the Prime's core. The ancient being staggered, its liquid metal shifting erratically. For the first time in its existence, the Architect felt pain. Darius stood over it, rifle aimed at its head. No hesitation. No surrender. He pulled the trigger. The aftermath. A galaxy without masters. The Architect's death sent a shockwave through the Empire. Their leadership was gone. Their fleets were in ruins. The galaxy was free. For the first time in 1,000 years, no one controlled the stars. The Deathworlders stood among the ruins of the once great empire, their weapons lowered. The war was over. And yet Darius knew this was just the beginning. The future of humanity. The rise of the Deathworlders. Hale approached, his armor scarred from battle. It's done. Darius stared at the burning skyline. The last enemy had fallen. But what came next? For the first time in centuries, humanity had no enemy. No war. No extinction hanging over their heads. Graves stepped up beside him. "We could take it all," he said quietly. "The galaxy. The throne. Everything." Darius considered it. They had been victims, hunted, forgotten. But now they were the most feared force in existence. He turned to his soldiers, the last of the Deathworlders. "We don't rule," he said finally. "We don't become what they were." Graves nodded slowly. "Then what do we do?" Darius smiled, the first real smile in a long time. "We remind them why they should never forget humanity again." He turned to his crew, his people. "We go home." And for the first time in centuries, humanity had a home to return to.